The Bank of Canada cannot be trusted. That's what at least 41% of Canadians are saying, according to a recent poll by Angus Reid. But that same poll delivers a significantly different picture depending on how you look at it. And that picture is significantly different from what the Canadian media is portraying. In fact, it turns out that not as many Canadians are worried about or suffering from inflation as would be expected. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit, product, penalty, price in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. Okay, so welcome back. Today we're discussing the most recent Angus Reid poll with respect to the Bank of Canada, and more specifically, the trust that Canadians have towards the Bank of Canada. And what we're learning is that that trust level is going down compared to previous years. But so too is market sentiment, consumer sentiment, how people are feeling about their finances and the economy. And there really is a lot more to this report than just how Canadians are feeling about the Bank of Canada. There's a lot of really good information on how Canadians are feeling about the economy. But before we get into all the details, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers giveaway on July 1st, which is just days away. We are going to give away $5,000 to one lucky winner. But in order to win, you need to be subscribed to this channel and you need to go to 360giveaway.ca to officially enter. By the way, you get an extra entry if you follow me on Instagram and if you share the contest socially. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss Angus Reid's most recent poll, which is a really good one. I really enjoyed reading this one. 41% of Canadians don't trust Bank of Canada will tame inflation, poll suggests. That's the headline from BNN Bloomberg. It is suggesting in this headline here that there's just one small piece of information that you need to look at, and that is the information with respect to trust from the Bank of Canada. But there is so much more to this report, and we're going to go into all the details. I'll show you that in a second. But before I do, I want to show you the article here and specifically what BNN is pointing out. And more specifically, they are saying that 41% don't trust the Bank of Canada to deal with inflation. However, 46% are still confident that the Bank of Canada is doing a good job. So what that means is that there are actually more people who trust the Bank of Canada right now than don't trust the Bank of Canada. Now, obviously, there's been some political stuff that has led to less trust in the Bank of Canada. And without getting into any politics, just reading you the information here, basically what they are saying here is that Conservative Party voters, about 59% do not trust the Bank of Canada. People's Party of Canada voters, about 86% do not. And when you start getting into the Liberal support for the Bank of Canada, 69% of Liberal supporters and 47% of NDP voters said they have faith in the bank. So basically what is happening is that the central bank, the Bank of Canada, which should never be made political, is being made political. And depending on where you fall on the political spectrum, it indicates very much where you could be with respect to your faith in the Bank of Canada. And there's been some politicians who have definitely gone after the Bank of Canada recently, when, in my opinion, as an economist, when you look at what the Federal Reserve have done and the Bank of Canada have done, they've done the best with the tools that they had. And there were a lot of surprises, believe it or not, that caused inflation to basically take off where it was unexpected. So the decisions that were made based on the data that they had were the right decisions at the right time, at least in my opinion. And unfortunately, it's led to being a little bit behind on the inflation, or maybe a lot behind on the inflation picture. And that has led to a situation where we have seen inflation that is at the highest it's been since 1983. Now, this is really interesting. So this is the actual Angus Reid report. I like to actually pull up the actual data that is being quoted in these articles and the actual reports that are being quoted in these articles. And, just really interesting as an aside, I like this first paragraph. 1983 in Canada was notable for, among other things, and 1983 being the last time inflation was this high, the first time Canadians celebrated Canada Day instead of Dominion Day, Canadian band Loverboy cracking the top 100 domestically with Hot Girls in Love, I don't even know what song that is, and the Edmonton Oilers lost to the New York Islanders for Stanley Cup supremacy. It was also the last time the inflation rate in Canada was as high as it is today, 39 years later. So some really interesting facts there, really nothing to do with the economy, but when we start looking more at the details of this report, and we start to look at things like the questions that they're asking, which are all things considered, do you think you are financially better off or worse off than you were a year ago? Well, that number has come up quite substantially to 45% of people now believe that they are financially worse off than they were a year ago. Now, to put that in perspective, in 2018, 54% of people thought that they were the same as a year ago. And now this year, 36% of people believe they're in the same financial position as they were a year ago. And the obvious reason for that is we have higher interest rates, higher inflation. So it goes to reason that most people are going to feel like they are not in the same place as they were a year ago, with the cost of pretty much everything increasing. Now, an interesting point to note here, we've seen a whole bunch of articles with respect to rentals and rents going up significantly across the country. Renters are also having a difficult time. Half, 52%, say affording their rent is tough or very difficult. 1 in 3, or 32% of homeowners, feel the same way about their mortgage payments. Now, moving on to some more of the graphs in here. All things considered, do you think you were financially better off or worse off a year ago? We've seen this chart already. By the way, there's some people, a small percentage of people, feel they're better off now than they were a year ago, which is interesting. But at the same time, we're also seeing optimism fading. So even though we see a small percentage of people who think they're better off this year than they were last year, the expectations for the future seem to be waning. We've seen a decline in the number of people who believe they'll be better off a year from now, as well as a decline in the number of people who think they will be financially about the same as they are from now. And we're seeing a pretty significant increase in the number of people who believe that they will be worse off in a year. So that optimism for the future is fading, and that is very much due to the fact that it is expected that interest rates are going to go up, inflation is already up, and life's about to get a little bit more difficult. Now, this graph here I find really interesting. This is the economic stress index. And what it shows is the people who feel like they're struggling versus uncomfortable versus comfortable versus thriving. And we've got data points for January, May, and June. And what's really interesting here is that we're seeing more people feeling like they're comfortable in June than we had in May or January, which could be one of two things. This could be people actually feeling like they're more comfortable as they realize that rising interest rates aren't as big of an issue as they thought, or it could be a percentage of the people who are in the thriving category moving back down to comfortable. I can definitely tell you that this is something that we feel. We feel like we were thriving in January and May, and now we start to feel like we're comfortable and not necessarily thriving as much, especially given that we operate in the mortgage industry. Now, there's some good news on the grocery front. 52% of people are finding it very difficult to buy groceries right now and fit it within their budget. But that also means that there's 46% of people who are finding it very easy to fit the groceries within their budget, which is a good thing, especially considering how much food prices have gone up. Now, from a mortgage perspective and a debt perspective, this graph is really telling. The majority of people who are finding debt to be a major piece of stress in their lives right now are probably people who have bought in the last year, primarily because they've taken on a significant amount of debt to buy significantly higher priced houses, and a lot of them have taken on variable rate mortgages. So about 35% of Canadians aren't feeling any sort of stress with respect to debt, but we're seeing a pretty large number, which is 64%, feeling at least a minor amount of stress due to debt. And that again has to do with those high mortgage payments, probably high car payments, probably high credit card payments. And the single best thing that you can do if you're feeling stress from debt is simply get out of the debt. Sell the cars, get rid of the car loans, focus on paying down your credit card debt. And if you are owning a house that feels like it is just too expensive for you to maintain, then get rid of the house. Yeah, you might take a loss on it, but not having the stress is significantly more valuable than having a house that you can't afford and that is going to be even more stressful somewhere down the road. And to elaborate a little bit more on credit card debt, 2 in 5 have credit card debt in Canada, which means a lot of these people, so if 2 in 5, that means 40% of people have credit card debt, well, that's pretty much in line with the number of people who are feeling stressed out about their debt. Now, moving into housing costs, what we can see from this graph is that 53% of people who own homes feel like their credit is manageable and their home costs are manageable. 26% are feeling like it's tough, 7% are very difficult, but the vast majority, more than 65% of Canadians, are feeling like their debt is either easy or manageable, or at least their debt with respect to their home payments, which is really good. And I love this graph as well. The increase of a mortgage payment of 1% based on the market value of a typical home in different markets, so Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Calgary. And basically what you can see here is that in Vancouver and Toronto, a 1% increase in interest rates would lead to a payment increase of about $1,000 or more. But if you start getting into more normal priced cities like Montreal, Calgary, and Edmonton, a 1% increase actually doesn't have a significant impact. And if interest rates were to rise a further 2% in a place like Calgary, you're only seeing payments go up by about $430, which from the grand scheme of things with respect to income is about 3 to 5%, which most people can absorb and have been qualified to absorb given the mortgage stress test that was introduced years ago. So this is all to say there's some really interesting data here. What we're seeing is a certain portion of Canadians that are becoming more stressed about their finances, but we're also seeing a lot of Canadians who aren't stressed about their finances. Now, the one place where I would point out that people need to be really considerate is if they have 5-year fixed mortgages that are coming up for renewal in the next 3 to 5 years. You may feel like you have a false sense of security. You need to start planning for those higher payments now. You also need to start planning for them if you have a variable rate mortgage that has a fixed payment, because your payment increase will be even bigger than if you had just had a 5-year fixed mortgage. Now, if you've got an adjustable rate mortgage, your payment's going to increase as interest rates increase. So you'll feel the payment increases more gradually. But at the end of the day, the stress that you feel in your personal finances all comes down to the decisions that you've made in the past and the decisions you're making now. And you have the power to change the decisions that you're making now in order to make sure that you don't feel a significant amount of stress in the future. Get rid of the debt, get rid of the car payments, sell those houses that you can't afford if you can't afford them, and make sure that the amount of money that you need to spend every single month is significantly less than the amount of money that you bring in. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. I know it can be hard to live the lifestyle you want to live sometimes based on the amount of income that you have, but you have to make that choice to either downgrade your lifestyle or increase your income if you want to continue to live at a lifestyle that is above your means. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. Check out some of the other videos on the channel. They'll link here and here, and we'll see you on the very next one. Cheers.